In 1957, there was a boy named Andy. People used to say that he was possessed and killed by a demon, but nobody knows where that demon comes from exactly and how did he possess Andy. But some says that he came from the cemetery. Andy's house was in a remote location, about 50 miles away from Amityville. At the back of his house, there was an old cemetery having so many unnamed graves. All the windows of his house were facing towards the cemetery, and from the rooftop, one can see the entire cemetery. One day, about 2:30 a.m. at night, Andy was studying. It was unusually dark outside. Unsettled birds sounds like they are screaming or chanting something as if they have seen a ghost. This was disturbing for Andy, so he went to the window to see what is going on. He looked towards the cemetery and saw a woman going inside the cemetery. Her clothes were fully covered with dirt and she was limping as she walks. The boy was curious, so he decided to go behind the woman. He rushes outside his house, but the woman was already gone deep inside the cemetery. Now Andy was standing outside the wild and spooky entrance of the cemetery, thinking in his mind that it's not a good idea to go to the cemetery at this time, but he was eager to go behind the woman. Andy went inside, following the footsteps of that woman, and reached an unnamed grave. He was in front of a woman, but she was facing the opposite side. Andy mumbles and asks the woman, "What is she doing here?" Suddenly, he heard a bone creaking sound and the woman twisted her neck and flipped her head towards Andy without even turned. Now she was looking at Andy's face while her body and feet facing the opposite side. Andy was shocked, got paralyzed for a moment. Then he started screaming wildly while he was running towards the exit. At this moment he was only thinking to get his home, and at this moment he bumps his feet on a grave and fell. His parents found him unconscious outside the gate of the cemetery the next morning. Since that day, Andy starts behaving unusually. His family called a local priest from a nearby church, but they were unable to tell anything, or maybe they were too afraid to bring the truth on their lips. Then one day, Andy came out of his room. His clothes were covered in dirt and blood stains. His father asked what happened to him, and suddenly Andy twisted his neck just like the woman did in the cemetery. Andy died and fell on the ground, and a dark shadow left his body. Since then, the same demon has been haunting